our privilege to welcome today Mr. Bill Henson, who is president of Lead Them Home. I've known Bill for almost 20 years now. Talked with him when he was going to leave a very lucrative position in engineering to enter into this faith-based ministry, to minister to people who are dealing with same-sex attraction, to minister to individuals, to families, to churches. And so today he comes to help us think through how we might, as leaders in the Church of Jesus Christ, respond to what is a growing concern and issue that polarizes us indeed. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Gordon-Conwell. It's wonderful to be here today. I'd like to thank Dr. Isaac for the invitation to be here. And Dr. Pendleton, thank you very much for being a wonderful support to me for many years, as well as his sacrificial service as the chairman of the board of Lead Them Home since our inception. So it's a real privilege to be here with you today. 10 years ago today, or this month I should say, I received an invitation out of the blue. I was in the energy industry, to come and share my faith story at a college in Ohio, Oberlin College. Now, because I wasn't in ministry full-time, this seemed a little odd to just suddenly be asked to go to Ohio to share my faith story. But my story isn't just any kind of story. It involves the idea of having dealt with same-sex attraction my whole life, having lived in a gay relationship in my 20s, and then had a radical encounter with Christ, surrendering my sexuality to God at age 29. So the church is always interested in hearing a story like that. So I received this invitation. Well, the event was to take place in mid-November, and the day came for me to travel to Ohio from Boston. That day was November 19th, 2003. And does anyone know what happened on November 19th, 2003? Well, I didn't either, until I got off the plane in Ohio and learned that the Supreme Judicial Court of the state of Massachusetts had ruled gay marriage legal. So here I am, this wacko, right-wing, wacko evangelical guy coming to tell a story about coming out of homosexuality from America's first gay marriage state. And I felt a little bit scared and a little bit odd. But my fear would only go up because I was told that I was going to share with about 30 InterVarsity students. So that seemed like a very safe audience. But I soon learned once I arrived campus that there were 50 protesters greeting me. And inside was an auditorium filled with about 700 people. About 300 of them were from the gay community. And obviously they were there because they expected a message of hate. Instead, I simply shared about the love of Christ invading my heart, and I shared the invitations of Christ that he wants to come into other people's hearts. And the protesters that I met that night, I was desperate. I had no choice. I had to get to know as many people who were against me as I possibly could. So I spent time getting to know them. Hi, my name is Bill Henson. I'm here to share my story tonight. I see your sign, Campus Crusade for Hate. I hope that you'll come in and listen and actually hear to what I have to say. But I want to know, why is this such an important issue to you? And the first young woman I spoke to, she said, because I grew up with two moms, and I love them both. And I'm tired of you people that hate my moms. And I just looked at her, and suddenly, I was face to face right at the heart of culture war. And I didn't want to be there because I just wanted to love people. And suddenly, I realized, gosh, this person is hurting because she feels like people hate her moms. And I just looked at her and I said, if I had two moms, I'd love them both too. I hope you'll come in and listen to the story. And then the next woman, she was a little bit older. She was holding the hand of this little boy that had some kind of problem. I don't know exactly what, but he was a cute little boy. And I said, well, what brings you here tonight? She said, I'm here because I need my same-sex partner health care benefits to take care of my special needs son. And people like you keep trying to strip health care rights away from me. And I looked at that little boy in his eyes, and I said, ma'am, your son is precious, and he deserves all the health care that he needs. I would never want to take that from you. So, one story after another, it was transformative. You see, when you come out of homosexuality and you've thought evangelicals hate you all your life and suddenly you are an evangelical, there's a tendency to want to please evangelicals. No, I really did repent, seriously. No, I really am one of you. So you can kind of overshoot. You can become a little bit of a Pharisee. So I had a little bit of Pharisee in my heart. And suddenly I'm face to face with real people with real needs that Jesus cares for, he loves, and he wants to meet. And it knocked all that Pharisee, all those blind spots out of my heart. And I was able to see that people really do need Christ, and they need his love. Well, that night I shared my story, and I did not share a message of hate. I shared an invitation to Christ's love to everyone in that room. And after that night, those protesters that I spoke with, they came up to me, and they gave me a big hug. And they said, we may not agree with your beliefs or what you did with your life, but we just want to say thank you for not judging us. Thank you for not using the Bible to hit us over the head with a hammer. And so it was a very transformative experience. Now, I'd been in the energy industry at that time for about 15 years. I had no path of going into ministry. My wife and I thought we would be full-time missionaries in a foreign land, but that just wasn't coming together. So I was settling into my career in the energy industry. But a month after that event, I sat down about 10:30 at night. We had a 3-year-old daughter and a 6-week-old son about that time. And that's how old they were at that time. I sat down and I thought I was going to journal about my children. And I started journaling, and what seems like a few minutes later ended up being hours later, 4:30 a.m., and right before me is a 50-page vision statement for what became Lead Them Home. Literally, God placed a vision in my heart and had it documented. I did not sit down that night to plan to document a calling that would become Lead Them Home. I did what anyone would do. I sent this 50-page vision statement to Paul Borthwick and requested to have breakfast with him the following week to get his feedback, because I thought he'd be very impressed. I arrived at breakfast with great passion, and Paul very gently and kindly but firmly said, "Don't ever send anyone a 50-page vision statement again. Get it down to 1 page or 2 pages, and I will read this and I will give you feedback." It took me a year to get it down to 1 page. And then it took another year to get the courage to actually leave a corporate career to go into ministry full time. So that's a little bit about the founding of Lead Them Home. What is our vision? Our vision is reflecting Christ's love to gay people in the church. There's something very important about that vision statement. You see, we think of gay people as out there or over there or those people. But really, they're our kids. They're our cousins. They're sometimes our parents. They are growing up in our churches. We don't always know that because they don't always feel safe with us. And I don't know about you, but if we really have the truth of God and the power of God, I'd rather keep our kids that are gay in the church where they're exposed to the love of Christ and the power of God than to propel them out because it's not safe for them to be known. And so we want to care well, reflect Christ's love to gay people in the church. And if God sometimes opens the door for us to go beyond the church and to share Christ within the gay community, then praise God. But we'll focus on getting it right with our own kids first, because how could we ever get it right with someone else's kids outside the church if we can't even get it right with our own kids? That's where the work is to be done. Our ministry ends up touching 2 kinds of individuals that experience same-sex attraction or homosexuality. Those who identify according to their sexuality, those that are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, those who believe that they're born that way and therefore it is their identity, they have to live that out because it's who they think God made them to be. Now, I don't believe what they believe, but I understand the needs in their heart. And they're an important people, and they need our love, they need our compassion, they need our understanding. And then there's people like myself, people who have experienced same-sex attraction my whole life. There are people all along that scale in terms of what same-sex attraction means. For some of them, it's got a deep romantic component. They want to fall in love. For others, it's more like a sex addiction. There's not a romantic longing for them to be in a relationship. It's simply an attraction, and yet it's an exclusive attraction. Then there are those with bisexuality. The range of sexual expression and orientation is limitless. And I thought if you had same-sex attraction, it just meant you're gay. But literally, it can mean a lot of different things. There are a lot of straight people who are caught acting out in same-sex attraction or acting out with other people of the same gender. And it's not because they're gay. It's because of a wound. It's because of a need. It's because of an addiction. So there's a wide range of expression of what same-sex attraction means. And we need to meet the needs of all those people. As a ministry, we avoid culture war. We avoid politics. We avoid doctrinal debates. To say that we avoid doctrinal debates does not mean that I never am in a setting where we're going back and forth with sharing or a dialogue of different beliefs. It simply means that this ministry will not lead with a doctrinal debate that is often used as a hammer over the heads of people that are hurting. Our role is to humbly take Jesus in us, abiding in Christ, Jesus in us, taking that Jesus who is alive in us and who loves in us to people, even gay people, where they are. Now, as all of us know, Jesus once came to us where we were. It doesn't always mean we stay where we were, because he changes our lives. He gives us a new life, a new mission, a new vision for how to live for him. And there's suffering involved in this for many people. There's suffering involved in following Christ. Yet he is good, he is loving, and it's worth the journey of following him. Our role is to nourish spiritual identity in LGBT people instead of chopping at the roots of the spiritual faith that do exist. To see them as whole people, not sexual persons. Now, to see them as whole persons doesn't mean that they're not broken any more than you and I are both broken, but we are also a whole person with a whole personality, a whole identity. In other words, I will not reduce gay people to the mere reality of their sexual orientation. We're the ones demanding that they see their identity as something bigger than their sexuality. Well, if anyone is ever going to be able to see their identity bigger than that, they're going to have other people of Christ who see them as whole persons. We see we're living out in this ministry justice to a generation that is seeking it desperately in areas of perceived injustices. And one of the biggest injustices that our culture is wrestling over is how gay people have been treated over many decades, both within the church but also by society. Society tends to excuse itself and blame the church, but you don't have to go back far to see that even in general secular society, that gay people have not been treated well at times. Above anything, if Christ is love and his love changes people and changes their hearts, then I want to prove that the church can radically love gay people even across the belief gap that exists between us. This kind of vision, it has required in me, and it requires of us as a church, a certain posture shift, a shift in our posture, an adjustment in our actions, our attitudes, and our words to better reflect Jesus in us as a reflection of him to people where they are. Some of our core ministries, I'll just describe briefly. Family care. Family care is a setting that's confidential. We get parents and other family members together who are having a difficult time relating to their gay children or their gay family members, and we help equip them with a relational model, a pastoral care model to care well for their members, to help them to nourish faith identity instead of chopping at the roots of faith in their gay loved ones. The Church That Saves Lives is our social justice effort. We are working hard. We've been working hard for 9 years to save the lives of gay teens who are vulnerable to suicide. Gay teens are very vulnerable to suicide. I'll get into that in just a bit. The Bridge Home is an effort to work with secular care providers to make sure that they are actually encouraging close relationships between LGBT youth and their conservative families. What we often see, even in 2013, is secular providers actually riding off the coattails of culture war, seeing the shift in culture toward a gay-affirming world. And so they actually encourage kids that are suicidal to actually be disconnecting from their parents as an effort to defend that child. And what they're missing is that one of the biggest risk factors for suicide among gay kids is a disconnection with their family. So this is a blind spot in the secular medical profession and among other care providers, social workers, and this work is very much needed. I also do speaking, teaching, and I meet with individuals and families to help provide support to them as they're wrestling through various issues. But the core offering our ministry offers is Posture Shift. It's a seminar that actually I was thankful to be able to share here at Gordon-Conwell in the Mako department at a special conference they had a couple of years ago. And one day I hope that all of you all could hear the full Posture Shift teaching, but I'd like to share a bit about it with you here today. Posture Shift is a seminar that trains church leaders and elders, pastors, elders, any kind of ministry leader, an executive team. We want to start at the top. We want to train those leaders to enhance our abilities as organizations, as organizations in Christ, to reflect Christ's love to gay people, to relate well to them, to understand their needs, to offer effective outreach and compassionate pastoral care to them where they are in their life, and to walk with them. A posture shift is a shift in our actions, our attitudes, and our words. It's not a church policy, it's not a program, and it's certainly not a theological shift. So we're maintaining orthodoxy in this work. The way I could describe it is this: I'm not pro-gay in my beliefs, but I am radically pro-people because Jesus is pro-people, and that includes gay people. This private training, it's often not, it used to be offered to whole congregations, but you know, it occurred to me that why should we try to do a posture shift with the whole congregation when really it's the responsibility of those local church leaders to guide that posture shift in their own church. And there are significant issues to be wrestled over. Boundary issues around what is appropriate inclusion, where is it going too far, and that's best left to a private conversation. So increasingly, posture shift is a private training that occurs with pastors and elders, and we think through all of these difficult issues. The result of posture shift is this: an improved organic witness of local leaders to their own congregation and to their local community, that Jesus is for people. He's not aligning against people. Some of the feedback we've gotten, the most common feedback is this: Lead Them Home came to teach us how to extend Christ to gay people. Instead, it dramatically improved our outreach and pastoral care to all people. You see, sometimes if you deal with outreach and pastoral care in the most difficult area, it sets you free to do it better in your outreach to everyone and your care for everyone. Another feedback, this is kind of a scary feedback. One pastor, he put it this way. He said, Bill, I have to tell you, before Lead Them Home came and did Posture Shift, we really were debating becoming an open and affirming church, because the pressure of this social justice generation just sees how horribly we've treated gay people, and there's so much pressure on us to let go of this belief. Well, really, all we need to do is shift our posture. We need to prove to the world that across the belief gap, we can love people well. We do not need to let go of our theology. We need to grab hold to a more effective model for outreach and pastoral care. And so we're working to prove that we can do this work even while we hold to orthodoxy. Now, this is the interesting part. Posture Shift is not about my story. I love to share my story, but it is not about my story. Hey, the church has heard enough ex-gay stories, so to speak. I'm not saying let's get rid of the personal testimony. What I'm saying is, just because you listen to a personal testimony, that does not equate to actual work of outreach and pastoral care to your gay friends and family members. All you did is listen to an interesting story and praise God, and that's worthwhile, but there is work for us to do. So this is not about my personal story. Secondly, it's not about preaching. We need to preach doctrine. We need to not lose that, but we have work to do. And so we want to ground this in an action-oriented mission. This is an action-oriented mission. Specifically, it's a mission that is grounded within a missiological framework. It's grounded in a missiological framework because Jesus is for people. He doesn't look at people and see issues. He looks at people and he sees hearts. So we need an action-oriented ministry that will move us beyond the issue and to the people who actually need to receive Christ. It's not a theological compromise to see the gay community as a people group. In other words, if we're going to have a missiological approach, the missiology, the study of missions, if you look at the study of missions, it's a study of people, specifically people groups and individuals that fit within those groups. We're going to have to study this people group that we have long avoided and ignored. And we might have even felt like it was a compromise at one point to say that they were a people group, because that might say gay identity is real, and that would be a compromise. No, we have to get past these blind spots, these hang-ups. We have to say they are a people group. What would missiologists call them? Does anyone know what kind of people group they would be called? Unreached or underreached, for sure, absolutely. But they're referred to by missiologists as a socio-peoples group. If you take the Perspectives in World Missions course or other mission courses here at Gordon-Conwell, you'll likely hear that. Now, in the mission Perspectives on World Missions, I didn't actually see them identify the gay community as a socio-peoples group. But if you look at the definition of socio-peoples group, that's exactly what they are. So, they're a people group. And if they're a people group, it implies that they have a history as both a group and as individuals. So we need to get to know them. We need to get to know them as a people group and as individuals. In doing so, we're going to move our posture from a singular doctrinal view to a multidimensional view as we expand our relational skills for enhanced outreach and pastoral care. Now, today is not the opportunity to present posture shift, but I just want to share a little bit more about the insides of it. Part one involves gaining a multidimensional view of gay people, and we take a missiological view. We assess our relational witness to gay people, and we find that there are tremendous deficits. We don't have an effective relationship with gay people. We have a great spiritual distance between us and them. Actually, at the cross, there's not a lot of spiritual distance between us and them, but relationally, we've created that distance, or they feel that distance, and we have to span that difference. They're a socio-people group. They have a group history. We need to look at a history of them as a group, and what we find is much pain. We take a decades-long look at some of the things that have happened to gay people over the decades, and what we find is a lot of trauma, a lot of tragedy, a lot of rejection, a lot of exclusion, a lot of disownment, a lot of harm. We then make it more personal. Each of those individuals in that people group, they have a personal history. And this is a typical profile on the next slide. This is a typical profile for the hundreds and hundreds of gay teens that Lead Them Home has encountered over the last 9 years, probably over 1,000 by this point. The profile is very similar. This is a profile of trauma, long-term trauma. So most teens that are gay, whether they're accepting it or not, most of them are in some state of post-traumatic stress. Now, a lot of times we've only viewed them as rebellious, hard-hearted, resistant, and we haven't understood that that resistance may come from a self-protective heart that is trying to protect against wounds that have been hurting them for many years. You see, many gay teens, they grow up and they've been bullied, not just here and there, not just for a day or a week, but day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Folks, that's trauma. It's long-term trauma. It's post-traumatic stress. So we need to understand that their decision-making skills, their ability to be open to a God of love is going to be clouded by all the ways that they've been wounded by people, and sometimes people reflecting God to them. We're going to look at a long-term vulnerability view. Goodness, if they've been in long-term trauma, they are vulnerable people. And indeed, we find that gay teens are up to 8 times more likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual peers. We're going to look at a purity struggle view. It's on, here we go. You see, if people have been in long-term trauma, and then there's this God that demands this great thing, that the only thing that he wants to take from them is the way that they express love from their perspective, then, and yet they've been repressing those desires for years. They've been trying to run away. People have been telling them, you just need to change. You just need to choose not to do this. You just need to get fixed. They've been isolated. They've been lonely. They've been bullied. They've been teased. If you look at all that history, I mean, the path of least resistance is sexual expression. In other words, to get rid of pain, a lot of people use sex. And it doesn't take a gay person to do that. Many people do that. Straight people do that. The pornography problem in the church today is probably ultimately about a lot of pain in our hearts. And so gay teens are not that far away from the experiences that we have with our own sexuality in terms of the temptations we face, the weaknesses, the wounds that are in our lives. So we need to understand, to maximize the chance for the possibilities for celibacy, for purity, we have a lot of care that is needed to be offered to them in their lives. We're going to look at a spiritual access view. How accessible is God to them? Or to them, is Jesus a million miles away because they're the only person in the world that could never receive grace because of their badness? We're going to look at the relational language gap view. When we speak, we don't even know that our words are laced with expectation and judgment, and it propels young adults away from Jesus, away from the church. They go and they look and they find Jesus outside the church or in a gay and affirming church or in a gay Christian church. Hey, I want our kids to be here. If we've got the full truth in the full Bible and we offer a holistic spirituality, then I want them here. I want them to feel safe to be here with us. We look at a mental health view. This is not my research. This is a gay professor's research at Harvard University. But the reason I refer to it is because it matches exactly what I see. 60% of the gay males that I encounter have ADHD, bipolar, or OCD, or something similar along that line. That produces a tremendous anxiety disorder that complicates their life, that limits them, that cripples them. It's going to be hard for them to make wise decisions in that place. A lot of compassion is going to be needed. Okay, I need to finish up. So that's a bit about posture shift, and I'd like to close with just a few words. There's a generational shift that's going on right now. There's a social justice movement that is emerging. If you're under 28 years old, you care a lot about social justice. This is both exciting, but it's also threatening. Some of the most major efforts in the social justice world are threatening biblical orthodoxy. Rapid shifts in technology and culture are producing unprecedented pressures on the church. It is increasingly hateful to not embrace an open and affirming belief. Lead Them Home is quietly, we're not seeking a stage, we're quietly working among church and ministry leaders to respond to these pressures and to help them to respond to these pressures by offering radical care rather than defensive debate. The expected fruit is that we're helping gay teens survive very critical years when they're suicidal. We're helping kids that are literally just getting out of the hospital after a suicide attempt. We're helping kids to not be in the hospital by lowering the suicidal risk factors in their lives. We're nourishing spiritual roots of faith in LGBT persons. We're helping young people with same-sex attraction live satisfying, celibate lives by elevating the importance and the biblical call to singleness unless God brings marriage your way. We're increasing family and church care for both LGBT persons and those who experience same-sex attraction. The unexpected fruit is this, that radical care preserves orthodoxy inside the church, and it produces credibility to orthodoxy outside the church. After years of positioning Lead Them Home as a learner from LGBT leaders nationally and in the Boston area, 2 pro-gay organizations recently invited me to serve as a panelist at their Faith and Sexuality conference. They allowed me to share about Lead Them Home's work, as well as my personal journey of being in a gay relationship and then surrendering my sexuality to God as a matter of faith conviction. They had no incentive and no obligation to invite a right-wing wacko guy like me to their Faith and Sexuality conference. But the work that we've done over 9 years to work with them and learn from them how to save kids' lives produced credibility for them to say, we should have a full spectrum on what faith looks like, and therefore let's invite Lead Them Home to be here at this event. Now it's time for you guys to live it out, to live out the posture shift. And I'd love to share the whole seminar with you one day. Until then, you can go to leadthemhome.org and learn more. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today.